Hey there, geometry. We are back with lesson 1.3 using the midpoint and distance formulas. This is actually one of my favorite things to teach and learn. Today our objective is to be able to find segment lengths using the midpoints and the segment bisectors. We're going to talk about what each of those things means and be able to input that midpoint formula and the distance formula. So let's go and get started with our first vocab term. The midpoint is when that point divides a segment into two congruent segments. Okay. Basically, you're just going to look at, like, if we had line, this is not perfectly drawn, but if we had segment AB, okay, right there in the middle, that's going to be your midpoint. So on both sides, it's going to be the same length. Like, say if this is 2 centimeters, this one would also be 2 centimeters. From M to B and from A to M are the same. You could also write that as like a mathematical equation. Segment AM is congruent to segment MB. Okay. The other thing we want to look at is the segment bisector, and that's a point, ray, line segment, or plane that intersects the segment at its midpoint. Sorry for the bells in the background. I'm doing this at school, so okay. And we're just going to look at a few of those things of what that means. So starting off with example 1, it says identify the segment bisector of PQ. So the bisector is the M because it's right here in the middle. See that? So bisector is M. And then PQ, in order to get that distance, it's going to be equal to both of these added together. So that's 1 7/8 plus another 1 7/8. Okay. So when we add that together, if you don't have your scientific calculator, just remember all fractions have to have that common denominator. A lot of the times you can add it just like this. What I like to do is change these into improper fractions first. So this will be 15/8 plus 15/8. All I did was 8 times 1 plus 7. That would give you 30/8. Okay, which reduces to 15/4, which then as a mixed number is 3 3/4. So the total length is 3 3/4. For this next one, number 2, I want to see if you can try this one. So let's take time to pause the video right now, see if you can find your answer for the segment bisector, and then find all of PQ. All right, so by now, hopefully you've found it. PM is obviously going to be 2 2/7. Point M is your bisector. So to find this, you're going to add 2 2/7 together. What you could also do is 2 2/7 times 2. Okay, again, if you have a scientific calculator, you can plug that right in. If not, you would change these to both improper fractions. 2 2/7 is going to be 16/7 times 2/1. That'll be 32/7. Which when you reduce that is going to be 4 4/7. Okay. This is where it gets fun because now you're going to start combining some like terms. So again, find the bisector of PQ. That bisector is actually a line now. The bisector is line L. Okay, and I think we talked about this in a previous video. But whenever you see the letter L, it's going to be written in cursive because an L written in like print looks like the number 1. So that's why we always do a fancy L. Okay. Then what we're going to do is try to find MQ. So this is where it's going to get kind of interesting. We know that this side is equal to this side. So PM is equal to MQ. So that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an equation. 5x minus 3 is equal to this 11 minus 2x. Okay, this is where your algebra skills come into play of solving an equation with variables on both sides. So what I'd want to do first is to get all my variables to the left and all my constants to the right. Right here, it looks like it's easiest to go ahead and add 2x to put it with this 5x on the left side. Notice I did the opposite of minus 2x. That means I can cancel out these as well. And then I'm going to do a double step here. I'm going to add 3 to the 11 so I can go ahead and cancel this out. Okay, if that was too much for you, you can always break it down into 2 extra steps, but I kind of like to take care of everything and move everything where it needs to go. 5x plus 2x is 7x. These 3's canceled out. Negative 3 and a positive 3 is a 0. Those are inverse operations or additive inverses. But over here, 11 plus 3 is 14. And then to solve for x, we just do one more step, divide both sides by 7. X is equal to 2. Okay, now we know that x is equal to 2. I'm going to plug this 2 back in to that x to figure out how long is MQ. So I'm going to do 11 minus 2x, but instead of the x, I now have a 2. Order of operations says multiply first. 2 times 2 is 4, and 11 minus 4 is 7. So the segment MQ is equal to 7. Okay. This one right here is a great opportunity for you to try on your own. So here's what I'd like for you to do is pause, see if you can identify the bisector of segment RS, and then go ahead and try to find the length of RS. So that means the whole entire thing. Kind of similar how we did it previously in question 3, but now we're adding in trying to find the entire thing instead of just one side, either left or right. All right, now that you've had a chance to pause this video and then press play, let's go ahead and get started. The bisector of RS is going to be line N because it's here right there in the middle. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is set both these sides equal to one another. Notice how they have this one little tick mark here and one little tick mark here. That means they are the same length. So we're going to say that 4x plus 3 is equal to the 6x minus 12. Okay. Again, your main goal is to get all variables to one side and all constants to one side. I am a person of habit, so what I normally do is I just try to get all my x's to the left side. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to subtract 6x to get it on the left side, which means this 4x minus 6x will be negative 2x. And I'm also going to do my positive 3, make that a negative 3 to both sides. Here's where we can get tricky, okay? Let's combine like terms. I already did 4x minus 6x, that's negative 2x. Positive 3, negative 3 cancels out. Equal sign still in the middle. Negative 6x, positive 6x cancels out. Notice that this has a negative 12 and a negative 3. Those are both the same signs. That's going to end up being a negative 15. Okay? When we do that, we're going to have to divide now by 2. Let me get you a different color here. Sorry, negative 2. Okay? X is equal to, you can say this is 15, positive 15 halves, but ideally, maybe we want to say this is 15 divided by 2, which I believe we'll get 7.5. So either one of those options can work, or 7.5. Now that we know that that is correct, we're going to plug that back into our original equation. But this time, remember, we're trying to find RS in its entirety. So when we do that, we want to have 4x plus 3 plus 6x minus 12 and figure out what this is equal to, because that's going to give us R to M plus M to S. Okay. Again, wherever you see an X, we're going to plug in a 7.5. So 4 times 7.5 plus 3 plus 6 times 7.5 minus 12. Okay. 7.5 times 4, I'm going to do my multiplying first, is 30. So I have 30 plus 3. And then the 6 times 7.5 is 45 and minus 12. Now that we have just adding and subtracting, we work at this from left to right. 30 plus 3 is 33. 33 plus 45 is 78. And 78 minus 12 is 66. So RS equals 66. All right, here's the next piece of your notes, the midpoint formula. We're going to use midpoint formula when sometimes our points are on a coordinate plane. So we're going to use 2 sets of ordered pairs. X1, Y1 could be the first set, and X2, Y2 could be the second set. Or point A is X1, Y1, point B is X2, Y2. We're going to use those points and plug in this formula. This is something you need to write down in your notes because I don't think that's down there for you yet, or it's like hidden right here in that picture. To find your midpoint, you're going to use this coordinate of parentheses x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Okay, So take time now to pause the video if you don't have that formula written down yet in your notes. So you got a big space there. When you're ready, click play and we'll keep going. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill out what we want this to be. So we have number 5, and if you want to pause and try this on your own, just filling this information out, it's almost like finding slope, but now we're setting it up differently, but we still have those x1, y1, x2, y2. What I always like to do is I like to go ahead and write down my x1, y1, my x2, y2. Again, if you want to pause right now, you can. Try it on your own and then check. If not, let's keep going together. Midpoint, x1 plus x2, that is 1 plus 7 divided by 2. And then y1, 2 plus y2 is 8 over 2. Okay? 1 plus 7 is 8, so 8 over 2 is 4. 2 plus 8 is 10. 10 over 2 is 5. So the midpoint of those 2 points on the coordinate plane is 4, 5. Here's where I want you to try this. So you're given endpoints again. You're going to plug that into your endpoint, your midpoint formula to find the midpoint M. Go ahead and pause now. When you're done, click play. All right, first things first, always label x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, I'm going to add my x1 and my x2 together first. -4 plus -6 over 2, comma, add my y's. 3, 5 over, or 3 plus 5 over 2. Okay. Once you have that, then we're going to simplify. -4, plus -6, that's -10 over 2. That reduces to -5. And 3 plus 5 is 8. 8 over 2 is equal to 4. So my midpoint is -5, 4. All right, this question number 7 is a little bit different. So I'm going to have you work this one out with me first, and then we will pause and you'll try 8 on your own. Notice how in number 7, though, you're given the midpoint. This is your midpoint value for x, which is a 2, and your midpoint value for y is a 4. We already know that one endpoint is 1, 1. So let's go ahead and name this x1, y1, which means we don't know x2, y2. So that's what we're going to figure out. Now, if you remember, your midpoint formula is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. If I already know x1 and y1, let's go ahead and fill out those numbers. So I have 1 plus, I don't know what x2 is, over 2, comma, my y1 plus y2. So that'd be 1 plus, I don't know my y2, over 2. Okay? What I do know, though, is that once I solve these, my x point for my midpoint is equal to 2, and my y point for the midpoint is equal to 4. So this is what I would probably need to do then. Set up an equation where I have my x point as 1 plus x divided by 2 is equal to 2. Solve that. And then that'll give me my x2. And then do the same thing for y. 1 plus y2 over 2 is equal to 4. And this will give me my y2. So let's try that. When you have a fraction like this, the first thing you have to do is multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal will be multiplying each side by 2 for my x coordinate. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Multiplying and dividing by 2, those cancel it out. So now I have just 1 plus x is equal to 2 times 2, which is 4. Then, to solve, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So my x is equal to 4 minus 1, which is 3. Okay. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing for my y values. Multiply by 2 on both sides first to get rid of this guy. So that frees up 1 plus y2 is equal to whatever 4 times 2 is, that is 8. Subtract 1 from both sides. My y2, running out of room here, so I'm going to scooch it down, is equal to 7. So my missing endpoint is going to be 3, 7. Okay, so what you're going to do is take that information and you're going to try number 8. So let's go ahead and pause. Press play when you're ready to check. All right, we know that my midpoint is -1, -2. So this is my x value, my y value. This is my x1, my y1, okay? When we want to solve for my x2 and my y2, we're going to use those as kind of mystery numbers. So we're going to start with x1, y1. So 4 plus x divided by 2 will give me my x value, which is -1. And then to get my y value, I will do 4 plus y divided by 2 is equal to that -2 for my midpoint. Okay? Solving, let's start over here on the left side to get my x value. Times 2 on both sides. So now I have 4 plus x equals -2 minus 4 from both sides. X is equal to -6. Over here, times 2 both sides. So now I have 4 plus y equals -4. Subtract 4 from both sides. Y is now equal to -8. So my point V is at -6, comma, -8. Lots of algebra in this section. All right, final piece of your notes today is a distance formula. Again, another one of my favorites. You do have to understand how square roots work, so hopefully you still remember that from last year, back in Algebra 1. Your distance formula, you're going to get 2 sets of points again. You will still label them x1, y1, x2, y2, but now your distance formula is going to tell you how far apart these are. This is kind of a continuation of lesson 1.2, because if you remember in lesson 1.2, we did something called the segment addition postulate, and you could only do that if it was a straight line or if they're collinear. Now we're going to be able to find the distance between things if we don't have them all in the same line. So that's really going to help us. So here's what you need to copy down for now is this distance formula. Distance between 2 points is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Go ahead and pause the video now, and then when you're ready, click play and we'll keep going. All right, number 9, you have to have some kind of understanding of direction. So before we talk about number 9, I'm going to go and let you know. We have north, south, east, west. Some people learn it as never eat soggy waffles if you go around the clock like clockwise. Your school is 4 miles east. Notice that's to the right and 1 mile south of your apartment. So what I like to say is your apartment is ground 0. So your apartment we'll just say is at the origin, 0, 0. Okay? Your school, 4 miles east. That means I went to the right. So that is a +4 for my x value. And then 1 mile south means I'm going down. So that's -1, right? A recycling center where your class is going on a field trip is 2 miles east and 3 miles north of your apartment. So R is the recycling. We have 2 miles east. Again, that is right. So that is 2 as a positive, and 3 miles north meaning up. Okay? So now what I need to do is figure out the distance between the recycling center and your school. These are 2 points that are not on a collinear line as point A. So A is going to S, A is going to R, but I need to figure out S to R. So what I'm going to do first, again, is label my points. I'm going to say S is x1, y1, and I'm going to say R is x2, y2. Okay? Using that distance formula, I have the square root of x2 minus x1, so that's 2 minus 4 squared plus y2 minus y1, 3, careful, minus -1. Some people only put 3 minus 1, and that is wrong because you want to do 3 minus the -1. That's going to give you the correct answer, okay? Using your skills of either just knowing your integers, this should be very easy for you, but you can also type this into your calculator. 2 minus 4 is -2, okay? And -2 squared is going to give you 4. And then 3 minus -1, that actually represents 3 plus +1 because of our rule of adding the inverse operation. 3 plus 1 is 4. So 4 squared is 16. Okay, now that I have this, 4 plus 16 is 20. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the square root of 20. This is, yes, where you want to have access to a calculator that can handle your square roots, okay? So once you get that done, I'm pulling up my calculator now, so please pause for a brief moment. Your square root of 20 is around 4.472, so we'll just round it to about 4.47. That's fine. So either one of these would work. So this is 4.47 miles, okay? Knowing that information, if you need to pause it here to finish copying, you can, but otherwise, you're going to try number 10. Okay, number 10 is in direct reflection to number 9, so you can still use that same idea, okay? Go ahead and take time now to pause. Try it on your own. When you're done, click play to check your work. Okay, so again, we're going to start off with understanding our awareness of where things are located. We have north, south, east, west, okay? You want to think about this as like coordinate plane. East to west is your x-axis, north and south is your y-axis. Your apartment still remains the same at 0, 0. That's your starting point every single morning, okay? We're now going to do between the park and the school, okay? From before, we know that the school up here, it says a school is 4 miles east, 1 mile south. So that was 4, -1, okay? But now we're going to try to find the park. The park is 3 miles east and 4 miles south. So that's still a +3, but 4 miles south will be -4, okay? Then finding the distance between those two things. We still are going to use our distance formula, x2 minus x1. Again, here's x1, y1. This is so helpful when you label. Please remember to label. It will help you in the long run. So let's go ahead and fill it out. x2 minus x1 is 3 minus 4 squared plus y2 minus y1. Again, being careful of your negatives here. -4 minus -1. You should have that double negative right here, okay? Let's start with 3 minus 4. 3 minus 4 is -1. -1 squared is a +1, okay? Then I've got -4 minus -1, which means -4 plus +1. That's equal to -3. So I have -3 squared, which is equal to a +9. 1 plus 9 is 10, so your answer should be the square root of 10, which is about, since this is not a perfect square, 3.16. And I'm sorry I didn't put the units, but this is the miles for number 10. That is going to conclude our notes today on lesson 1.3, the distance and midpoint formulas. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Catch you next time.